What's up guys? Today we have a video that I've been wanting to do for a really long time, and that is just a general walk around of a stock Z31 engine bay. Just so that you guys, if you're new to the car, you can kind of figure out what things are, what they do, and how it works. But my car is not a very good example of that because it is pretty far from stock at this point. If you aren't aware, it's got an NA2 T-swap. I've done a whole wiring harness. It is pretty customized, but thankfully we have a new Z, and this is not our Z, no, it's one of my friends, and it's got a bit of damage. I'll show you in just a bit here, because let's just say it hopped a curb or two, so it's not in great condition, but it's here, and we're going to do some work on it. I'll take you guys with all the stuff that we're doing. I think it's going to be like control arms, a lot of suspension stuff, just like that, to get it drivable once again. But regardless, today we're talking about the engine bay. This is a really nice stock example of an engine. Let me see, so I'm pretty much just going to start in one corner and just kind of work my way around. There's a lot of wiring and everything in here, so it is a little bit much, but we're just going to go ahead and see what we can do. There are a few things that aren't stock on here, and I'll try to point them out, but it's more just deletes than anything. Let's go ahead and start back in this corner over here. So this is your wiper motor right here. This is your speedometer cable. It comes through the firewall up and around onto the throttle right here. This other cable goes to your cruise control. If you're curious why your cruise control isn't working, there's two things you need to make it work. Speedometer signal and there's like a little button on the pedal. I have a video on that. There's like a little plastic thing that likes to break. So you need both of those in order for your cruise control to work. But that's that. Geez, there's so much stuff here, I just thought about it. Alright, so down here in the corner is your clutch master cylinder. So if you have a manual car, this is where the clutch fluid goes. And then this is just a stock hiding place for a belt. I'm just kidding, that's not stock. And then this I don't believe is stock either, that's a washer fluid pump. But actually it might be stock. So this is a 88 car, I believe. So they might have changed this because this actually has a really nice mount. But actually it might also just be drilled in with some tapping screws. So you may or may not have a washer pump there. Usually they're on the bottom of the washer reservoir right here. You can see there's one right there. Usually there's a second one on like the other side. I have a video of retrofitting some new pumps onto mine, if you're curious about that. So this is your window washer fluid. You can see it's right there. This is your brake master cylinder. This one is a little bit low on fluid, as you can see, so we might go top that up for him. And then back behind it is, of course, the brake booster. You have a vacuum line right here going to your brake booster that comes from your manifold, and that is what gives you the power brakes. Looking pretty good. You got an intake pipe right here. It goes down along there, and then this box thing right here is your mass airflow sensor. That actually is pretty important on a stock car. If you are having trouble with idling and running, I would definitely take out your MAF sensor, excuse me, and clean it off with a MAF cleaner. You can't just use regular brake clean. You need a MAF specific cleaner. And you can always check your MAF if it's the one that's giving you issues by unplugging it, and then it sends you to just a stock map just to make sure that it's nice and, you know, safe. So it's a little bit rich, and it's conservative. It'll limit you to, I think, 2,000 or 3,000 RPMs. But if it's idling really, really well with the MAF unplugged, that might be your issue. Over here we have a bunch of emission stuff. This is part of the recirculation, so it pulls clean air from the intake and then injects it into the exhaust. And then there's a bunch of other random solenoids in here, stuff. I'm not quite sure what this one is. My car didn't have this, but I think it might be an igniter module. Yeah, so my igniter module looked a little bit different. A common upgrade to the igniter on the Z31 is called a PRW2. I have a video on swapping that over. There's also a write-up on Xenon Z-Car, and I think Godzilla Raceworks now actually sells full kits with heat sinks from PaulNet AllNet. So if you're curious about that, it just helps give you a strong, reliable spark. It is an upgrade on a stock car, so you can't necessarily say that it won't do anything even on a stock car, because people just do see stronger, cleaner spark with it. Over here is your headlight motor. You can see there's a little linkage mechanism down there in order to pop the headlight up and down. If you want to pull off this cap right here, you'll see a knob on the back and you can move it manually. If your car has battery and you try to move it, it will eventually pop itself up and then back down. So if you want to manually adjust this, you're going to need to undo the battery or find wherever the electrical connection is and unplug it. That is pretty much everything for this corner. If you have a turbo car, you might have a boost sensor over here. I'm not quite sure what it looks like. I'm sure you can Google it, or Xenon Z-Car might have a write-up or something with it. Let's jump over to the front here. This is the AC compressor. You can see this one has been retrofitted to 134A. This fitting right here would not be on a stock car. You can tell that this has been retrofitted, or at least somebody tried to retrofit it. Whether or not it works is still a pretty good question. This is the distributor right here, and this wire right here goes all the way down to that box right there, that kind of thing. That is your ignition coil. So this whole ignition system, you get your spark from right here, and then it goes to the distributor, and then it goes out to your spark plugs. They are labeled on top typically 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6. So if you don't remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the order of the cylinders. This one, being an 88, I believe, has a cover that typically goes on top like this. So if you see your distributor and you're like, oh, what is that? It's just a cover. Pops up, you pull off this little thing on the edge, pops up like that. Distributor underneath. It's always good to check your cap and rotor, make sure they're not worn too much, and replace them with a good quality replacement. You can see this is a Bosch cap. I can't really say anything about Bosch, but I know that you could just still buy an OEM Nissan cap, and you want it to be pretty reputable, because that is a large part of your spark. Coming up here real quick, we have our intake. So this is where the air filter lives for your engine. And then this is actually just a silencer right here. So if you take this out and put a straight pipe through here, or just an air filter off the edge here, you can hear a little bit more induction noise. It does sound pretty cool. Nothing crazy, but you get a little bit of naturally aspirated rumble. Over to the side here is the upper radiator hose. It's, well, one of the two. You can see there's one right here as well. There's a pass-through right here. This is a common rust spot for just the metal pipe in there, and Past Power Innovations now sells reproductions of those. So when I first bought my Z, it was rusted, like there was a hole right through the side, about a ½ inch through, and I just had to buy a standard pipe and put it end to end, but it's actually bolted on the back. I don't know if you guys can see right there, it's bolted on. But Past Power now sells reproductions. I think it's like $30 or $35, super cheap. So I actually have one of those to put back in my car when I redo my radiator hoses. So if you have rust in your cooling system, I would just replace that. It goes down over, and it's kind of hard to see. Over to the side here is where the radiator inlet is. And then, of course, that is pretty much it through the front. This is your fan shroud. There's a lot of debate about fan shrouds, so I'm just going to tell you what you really should do, and then people can debate whether or not it worked for them or not. But you really want to run all of your fan shrouds if you have a stock clutch fan. So we'll come back in here. You can see here's the fan down there with all the fins. That's called your fan clutch. Basically what it does is as it heats up, it locks the fan together more. So you can see it spins pretty freely right now, but say it was warm, it would lock up pretty well, and that would give you a 1-to-1 spin of the engine to the fan clutch. It's actually on top of your water pump if you're curious. And the reason for this and keeping all the fan shrouds is because you need to keep suction through the radiator. If you deleted this upper cover right here, you would start losing a bunch of suction because now the fan is just pulling in from right up here, and you want it to go through the radiator. So my opinion and the best idea is if you have a stock fan clutch setup, you want to keep all of your shrouds. You don't want to get rid of any of them. It's going to give you the best performance cooling, especially right now. Currently, nobody is making new aluminum 3-row radiators for the Z, and it's not good. Champion used to make them, used to be able to find them on eBay. I have an eBay radiator in mine, and it works really, really well, but nobody is selling them right now other than stock, like copper core ones and like Rock Auto. So if you have a stock 2-row radiator and you want to get the max out of your stock cooling system, definitely keep your fan shrouds. Alright, let's hop over here. Actually, there's a few things I wanted to go over real quick on this side. This is a PCV hose, comes out of the valve cover up here into the intake. Nothing too crazy about that. This does like to crack. Past Power also sells reproductions of those, although I think they're out of stock at the moment, but they should be coming back at some point. And then down here you have a vacuum line that goes over, there's like a bunch of metal pipes that run back behind the intake plenum. This goes to one of them. I'm not 100% sure which one it goes to. I'll look when we get back over there. This is your throttle position sensor right here. And then this is your idle air control. This is your idle air control valve right here, and it does a little S-turn to the intake. That Past Power sells as well. There is a write-up on Xenon Z Car, I believe, on how to adjust this to adjust your idle, as well as the stock factory service manual has stuff as well. I think that is it on this side. Yeah, looks pretty good. Let's hop over here. Alright, coming around to the front of the intake plenum right here is your fuel pressure regulator. These are kind of known to go bad. It's not like 100% terrible or anything. It's just kind of like buy a new one and try putting it in. I would really just test your fuel pressure first. This line right here comes from the fuel filter. You tap into this, and then you just test your fuel pressure. I have a video on that as well if you want to test it. I believe you should be seeing around 40 psi, but check the video and I'm sure I say what the pressure is. That's how you're going to test this as well with it running. If you can pull off this top vacuum line and there is fuel coming out of it, then that means the diaphragm has ruptured and it is bad. Off to the side here is a sensor. There's a little bit of controversy on whether it does anything or not, but I'm pretty sure it does pretty much nothing for fueling. So what you can do is if yours is broken or like this little wire likes to break a lot, it really doesn't matter too much. If you live in an environment where it's pretty cold, it might benefit you to have it, but for rather temperate climates, you're probably fine. That's pretty good. We'll come down over here. This is your charcoal canister. It brings in fumes from the gas tank and puts them into your intake. So you might actually see there's a couple of vacuum lines that go up right over here and then back over to there. That's part of the system here, and it just brings in the gas vapors and makes sure it gets disposed of and burnt instead of releasing it into the atmosphere, of course. Usually there is a vacuum canister above it right here. This one has been deleted. It's just kind of a black cylinder and it's got vacuum lines going to various places. One of them is the heater petcock. This guy right here, you can see it's capped off even though it doesn't need to be capped off. Another one, it has a feed line that comes into here to the main intake, and then possibly one to the cruise control. I don't remember. This is a vacuum actuated cruise control, but I can't remember if the stock line goes to it or not. That's this guy right here. So other than that, you have your coolant reservoir right here. This is where you put coolant in. His is unbolted for unknown reasons, but your cap may have a little spout over the edge, or if you have a later version like this, it'll be like that. Nothing too crazy. You have another motor over here for this headlight. This is your relay box. Usually all the labels on the front are gone. I think you can buy reproductions of those from the zstore.com. Let's see, this is your reservoir for your power steering, and right there is your pump for your power steering. So if you're having leakage issues in this area, it's probably going to be the power steering, and the kind of symptoms of that are a failing alternator that is caked in stuff. This car actually had a leak in the power steering and it leaked all over the top of the alternator and it killed the alternator. So you want to make sure if you have leaks to take care of that and address them before they kill something important. Below this, so if you, let me back up real quick. This is a 1987 through 1989 model. If you have a 1984 through 1986, that's naturally aspirated, your alternator is going to be on this side of the engine. But if you have an 89 or an 87 through 89 naturally aspirated, it's going to be on this side of the engine. And all turbo models have it on this side of the engine. So it's a little bit difficult to see. Down right there is the alternator. It's pretty hard. It's behind some pipes. The alternator is down on this side right here for all turbo models and the later NA models, which is, it's, you know, honestly better because then you don't have to swap it over if you ever need anything. That's where the alternator is. This is a headlamp sensor. I believe it just tells the car when the lights are up or not. This is your AC dryer, so it's part of your AC system. Usually it has leads. This one doesn't. I'm not sure where they are. This is just part of the ACS system. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but that is that. This is the fuel filter, of course. Talked about that earlier. You have another PCV hose right here, and there's actually a PCV valve in here. It's just a little thing about that long that plugs into the intake. You can buy those new on Rock Auto, I believe. Here is your crank angle sensor connector. So this wire goes over here and then into the crank angle sensor in the distributor. And then usually, see if I can find it. It's the power steering. Usually you'll have, it's down here. This connector, this black connector right here, is a very important connector. It's your excuse me, it is your CHTS, cylinder head temperature sensor. And the reason that that is important is because it tells the engine computer how warm the car is, and the computer compensates for fuel based on that. So if you have a bad CHTS, it is going to run really bad. It's going to take forever to start. It is just going to be a nightmare. So whenever you do any work on this, whenever you do a timing belt, whenever you have anything apart, you really want to do your CHTS, just replace it. It's like $30. Past Power sells an extended harness that you can put. So if I also have a video on relocating the CHTS to the upper intake. It's much easier to get to. Otherwise you have to pull off the timing or bend your timing cover, and I'm not really a fan of bending the timing cover. But that is a very important sensor. You can unplug this and test with an ohm meter what the values are depending on the temperature to see if you're relatively in a good position. Those do like to go out, so again, if you're in the area, just replace it. Let's hop over here. This is a cold start injector, and it's not a fuel injector, it's an air injector. So one of the hoses from the other side comes up into it right there. Oops, right there is a hose that goes into this. And basically on cold starts, it lets more air into the engine. It's an idle up solenoid basically, but it isn't necessarily powered. It actually has like a heating coil inside, and once it gets hot enough, it actually closes itself. So that is an interesting one. You can read more about it in the factory service manual. That's where I learned about that. Back here is some more of your EGR stuff. So you can see there's a pipe right there that goes up from the exhaust over and then into the bottom here. That is your EGR pipe. It comes up through here, does whatever it wants, and then it gets injected into the back of the intake plenum right there. This one is an M22 down there. Bolt, if you want to take that out and plug it. I think it's M22 by 1.5, but it could be 1.75. It's a pretty standard size, so just look up M22 plug, and you'll probably find the one that you're looking for. I think that is pretty much everything on this side of the engine. Again, we have our cruise control right here. That is vacuum actuated. I'm not really too big into the diagnostics on that, so if yours isn't working, you need to make sure it has vacuum, you need to make sure it's plugged in, you need to make sure that your brake pedal, that little plug, isn't broken, and that your speed sensor works, your speedometer. That is the main stuff that controls the cruise control. Of course, you have your your battery over here. This is the negative terminal. It's pretty much always the negative terminal unless somebody's really messed up your car. This is the positive, and it goes down to the starter and then over to the fusible links box. This is the fusible links box. Pull this off, and there's a bunch of colored wires in there. These are like fuses, but basically they can handle a little bit of overcurrent for short periods of time. I sell a replacement to this that upgrades to standard fuses. The reason for that is because you can't buy these fusible links anymore. So if you burn one out, you're out of luck. Except for the battery. Let's pop this off. You can buy this biggest one, which is the battery fusible link, but all the other ones are one use. Geez, I think that is everything, guys. Let me go ahead and look over. I think we've pretty much covered everything now. I guess I didn't mention specifically, that's the heater petcock. It allows coolant flowing through the engine to go inside to the heater core. Basically just, it warms up the heater core when you turn it on to hot air, and it keeps it cool when you don't have it on hot air, because you don't want hot coolant in your engine bay or in your cabin if you don't need it to be. I think that is it, guys. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, definitely drop a comment down below. Ask away. I will do my absolute best to answer. I think I got pretty much everything. But of course there's, you know, a million vacuum lines and everything in here that I couldn't get to specifically because I honestly don't know where they go. There is a vacuum diagram. I think there's a website called like Thumper ZX or something with a vacuum diagram and the lengths of all the hoses that you need if you wanted to replace them. But I'm not 100% sure about that. Anyways, guys, I hope this was informative. I hope if this is your first time using a Z, this kind of gave you a really good general knowledge of your car and what you need to work with if you're troubleshooting stuff. But other than that, I will see you guys later.